she walks through the corn leading down to the river. Her hair shone like gold in the hot morning sun.
Hello, I am going to teach you how to can turkeys, or chicken, or they're very similar. They take just as long to process. Today I'm going to teach you how to do it in a pint jar, although you can do it in a quart jar if you want. Quart jars require a teaspoon of salt in the bottom. Pint jars, a half a teaspoon of salt. And as you can see, I don't know if you can see the salt in there, but I've already put salt in there. I've got several jars. My pressure canner, as you can see over here, it's an old one, and it will hold 7 to 8 pints or quarts. So I've told you to fill that. One thing I have done that has been really helpful is, so I'm not using every single burner on the stove, is I get my crock pot and I fill it with my rings and my lids so that they can be heating up and get them melted. Now this is not a class on the basics of using a pressure canner. So you have to use your book to tell you exactly how your pressure canner teaches you how to use it, because each one does things a little differently. Like I have 2 different canners, one that's newer, and it requires to put 3 quarts of water inside of the bottom of my canner. And this one, which is much older, I think it was made in the early 1900s. I got it at the Goodwill. And it's my favorite one. And I put 2 quarts of water in it. Okay, so what you do is you cook your turkey or your chicken, whatever you want. Now you can put it in raw. You can see here's a turkey. I haven't deboned it yet, but I'm gonna debone it, and I put it in this pan. After I've deboned it, I usually put my husband, that's his job, and then I process it and do everything else. And so he's gonna be taking the meat off of the bone and putting it in the pan, and then I'm gonna start filling the jars. And you only wanna fill your jars up to about here. And I usually kind of use this wooden spoon to kind of poke the meat down in, because there's usually a lot of holes and gaps, and then you can put more in it if you want it. And then after you're done, then your jar will be full of meat. And you don't want to have big chunks of meat. You kind of break it up. It doesn't have to be little pieces, but you know, about this size pieces of meat in there, so it won't be sticking out all over the jar. And then once you've done that, then you start using hot water from the tap. The book says to boil water and pour it into here. I have never done that. It just takes too much time, and I use another pot that I don't want on the stove, and I don't want it heating up the room. So I just use hot tap water. And when this is full, I've got one that's actually, the lid's been put on right here. You can see my little jar. I've only filled up the meat to here. And before I put the ring and the lid on, I'll run the outside edge of the jar around the water as it's coming down, just to clean off that rim, and filling the water up to here, just the neck right there. That's where I fill the water up to. You want a good headspace of no water after that. So once you get the water up to there, then you're going to want to clean the rim and make sure no grease is on there, no food or whatnot. Actually, I forgot to tell you, I usually use this when I'm putting meat inside. Then that way it's not touching the top of the ring so much. So then your jar is filled with water. You take a paper towel or just a dish rag that's really clean, and you wipe down that rim. And I usually wipe down the edge where the screw cap is going to go on. Okay, so your jar is all ready. It's got warm water in it. In the meantime, while you're doing that, then you're going to want your pressure canner with those 2 quarts or 3 quarts of water, whatever your book says. You're going to be heating it up so that it's just simmering, the water that's in there. So it's warm, and your water in your jar is warm. And then you're putting it inside the pot. Make sure you have a little basket like this, so you can lift them in and out, but you want to make sure your jars will let this close when you put your lid on. Okay, so once you get them all in your pot, then you're going to be putting the lid on. See my lid? And seal it up. And then you start to turn you want the petcock to be all the way open. And your book should tell you where your petcock is. Some of them are different than this old one, but if you just read your directions in your book. So you basically are just putting turkey or chicken, fill it with water and make sure the salt's in the bottom, and put, wipe the lid or the rim, put the hot rings and lids on. And when you screw down the ring, you don't want it to be too tight. You want it snug. Does that make sense? So once they're in here and you put this on, you turn the heat up all the way to as high as it will go. And with mine, I have to let a lot of the pressure out, or a lot of the air out of here, so there's more pressure in here. And your book will probably tell you to do the same thing. You'll process it in here for, with pints, it's 65 minutes, and I believe it's 90 minutes for quarts. And once you're done, you've got to let it cool. Your pot has to be, you turn off the heat, you let your pot cool down. After it's cooled down, then you can open the petcock and relieve the steam that's built up inside. And then open the lid. Be careful, it's really hot. Make sure your pot is in the middle of the burner when you put it on there. And then after that, once my jars are inside and I take the lid off, there's gonna be all kinds of steam coming out. And that's when I take a towel and I let it cool, because you've got the burner off. I just let it cool with this on top, because you don't want to cool down your jars too fast. They're so hot and there's so much pressure inside there. You're going to want to slow cool it, and that's what I usually do. And after I wait about 10 minutes, take a break, and then I take this off, and then I get my little jar lifter outer. I don't know what they call these things. And you start lifting them out and you put them on top of a towel. You can see where I've got these here. These were just processed earlier today. And as soon as you process, or as soon as you take them out, you want to cover them up right away. You want to keep that heat in there, because that lid, as it begins to cool, it suctions that lid down in so that it makes a good seal. Okay? And you just let it cool there. I usually finish it midday or later on in the day, and I don't even put them away and take the towels off until the morning. So they have plenty of time to sit there. And before you put them away, you want to make sure that every one of them has sealed. And you can tell by just pushing the lid in. If it makes this sound as you're doing it, then it's not sealed. But if it's completely down in, sectioned in, where it's concave, then you know it's been sealed. There was one jar that didn't seal when I did them the other day. So sometimes it just can be, some little something. There might have been a little grain of salt underneath that jar lid that caused it to not seal. So, all right, you're on your own.
Like fire.